Hi, this is James Page at the FTTH Council Europe meeting in Madrid, and I'm with Fibre CEO Greg Mesch. Greg, thanks for coming and having a little chat with us. Fibre, hugely successful network builder in the UK. How are things going for you at the moment?
They're going really well. Obviously, if you've followed us, we've managed to raise quite a bit of capital prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, but before the financial stress that's taken place now. So we're really in a good capital position. But more importantly is because we're old, we're on our 13th year, we have a really mature organization now. So we're building at a steady rate, almost 100,000 homes per month. Did over 1 million just last year, so we're kind of on a steady trajectory, steady run rate, and we're working on just getting better, and better, and that it really goes to how hard it was to mobilize up, and you can build a lot, but can you bring the quality to bear that your big customers want? We're pure wholesalers, so our big customers are Vodafone and TalkTalk. Of course, they want the finest product available, which is the standard would be Openreach, so we try and do everything better than them as a wholesaler. So we're really pleased with where we've arrived at this stage, and most importantly, we're really pleased with the take-up and the connections, because not only are we building across 75 cities simultaneously, but we're installing customers with a standard SLA from as high up as Inverness in Scotland all the way down to Portsmouth in the bottom south of the UK. So across all these cities, we're installing, at a rate of almost 25,000 connections a month. That's delivering, tremendous cost savings and speed increases over anything they've ever had. So all in all, we're really in a very good position and in a very reflective position, because it's now with the change in the financial markets, which are there, and the maturity of all the other, let's say, altnets, as well as BT and where they're building, and BT Openreach and where they're building, and where our customers want us to build. So we're in a very reflective time where we're thinking now very carefully about where we should go. Should we build at the same rate we've been building? Or should we slow in certain areas and speed up in other areas? We're starting to focus in on the Project Gigabit program from the UK government. We've been announced to win the first one in Cambridge. And if you think about what we're doing with that, we have Cambridge as a city we're building, and Peterborough as a city we're building, and we had some other market towns we were building. And that program allows us to leverage that whole infrastructure we have and become the most densest, most powerful fiber provider in that area. So we're kind of rotating ourselves now around to where do we want to be in the future that would create the most valuable strategic asset that customers would want to use, which to us is a super dense network across its chosen territories. We can't build across the entire UK, but certainly 30% of the UK we can tackle, which is our program. And we can densify in that 30%, which really helps our service providers perform. So we're in a very good spot and very reflective now of how we mature to the next stage and how we get there. So
really interesting, Greg, to hear that. So we're here out at the FTTH Council meeting in Madrid, and talking to a lot of people in similar positions, thinking about where they are in their home markets, and in quite different positions in certain parts across, but facing similar issues in terms of rollout versus and deployment versus actually getting people to be on these networks. Where do you think we are when you look across the water and look at some of our European partners?
Well, I can tell you where we were. Having myself lived and worked and built fiber networks in almost 5 European countries now over the last 27 years, but UK was a complete laggard and late to the game, lowest penetration, and it was a result of being trapped behind a single-sourced incumbent, and I've been accused of fueling fueling the terms, but it was a duopoly in the UK. You had Openreach across everything, BT Openreach across everything, and then Virgin across about half the country. So your infrastructure was a weak duopoly. A strong duopoly would be 2 networks across the whole thing. A weak duopoly is 1.5 networks. So by definition, it was stuck in a weak duopoly. And what they did, and to the government's real credit, Sharon White, the old CEO of Ofcom's credit, is they said, let's break that, try and break that. And they introduced regulatory reform that ushered in a huge wave of capital, private capital, not even government capital, into alternate fiber builders, City Fibre just being the largest, where we've raised over $5 billion in debt and equity to do. But it has forced BT to unlock its balance sheet, right? So they had no fiber program until City Fibre was announced its million. I think we were announced our 2.5 million rollout before BT even announced that they were going to be fiber first, right? So as much as they want to talk about it, it was what competition got them to move. It's what's gotten Virgin to move and say, we're going to rebuild our network. It's competition. And so what we've learned in the UK and what the other continental markets and the European markets is that whipping the incumbents to try and make them invest isn't really working. But what does work is creating fear, and the fear is when you allow competition to get in and start building. So any way that the competitive infrastructure market can be unleashed, it will draw in capital and it will make the incumbents invest more. In the UK's context, they have now a very difficult position, because now that both the incumbents have woken up and are now viciously or aggressively trying to go after the market, then the regulator needs to move into another stage, and that other stage is protecting the competition that's there, that has really brought the benefits of this whole investment program to the market. And not only do they deserve to be protected, they've earned the right to be protected. So the Ofcom, the UK government, has to now move into a period of saying, well, actually, where do we want it to mature like? Do we want it to return back to a weak duopoly, where it's now a super monopoly, maybe with BT with fiber and everybody else pushed out of the market? We would say, no, that's not a good place for the UK as a healthy spot. Right? It wasn't healthy before. It certainly won't be healthy again. So the UK regulatory framework or environment needs to shift now into, okay, how do we protect that spark of competition that has brought so much benefit to the UK? How do we protect it so that at the end there's 3 or 4 big networks, each competing? I mean, the rule of competition stands pretty clear, is when you have 2 networks, they divide up the market, a duopoly. When you have a third, it always innovates and lowers costs. That's, by definition, the third entrant in a controlled market must introduce innovative products or nobody will use it, and they must be cost effective or nobody will switch. So the concept of having 3rd or 4th network infrastructures there and having them protected in a regulatory way, I think, is sacrosanct to the UK's future as a post-Brexit child that says, I want to compete efficiently against the whole world. Well, you better have the damn best digital infrastructure, because you're a service-based economy. So I think some of the lessons the UK is showing is create competition that sparks the investment and sparks change, but now evolve it so that you don't return to what you had in the past, which is big incumbents that naturally get lazy, that naturally start to control their market and control their cash flows so that they stop investing. And so that's kind of what the UK has suddenly launched itself into, an enviable position of attracting all that capital, but now it needs to demonstrate even further that we don't want it to return to a lazy duopoly.
Okay, so there's lots potentially that the European nations could learn from the UK on that side of things, but also wondering, the competition element clearly important in that sense, but will there still always remain a need maybe even across Europe, but in the UK, in your experience, for government intervention to get to those really hard to reach, the Area 3, the sort of the regional areas that might need government subsidy? Because I think that's still something I think that we need to have across Europe as well.
Yeah, I think there is a need for the government not only to help regulate or help to control the market so that a dominant environment doesn't return, but it's also the need of the government to help stimulate building where it needs built. I've often challenged the regulator with I would build everything in a territory if you give me exclusivity there. If you don't give me exclusivity and you make me compete for it, well, then you have to allow me a economic advantage, or otherwise I have nothing. There's no reason for anybody to invest if you can't get the customers because you have no barrier to it and you have no economics to attract them. Then you're creating a false narrative of, we'll let you build out there. Well, who cares? I can't get any customers and I can't make any economics to make them work. So the government has a role to stimulate what they've done with even their Project Gigabit, which I know that there's stimulus programs in France that did it as a franchise basis. But they have a real strong role in saying, okay, well, and the example is the last press release we did on the Gigabit program around Cambridgeshire. We had 2 big builds in 2 big cities there. We agreed to bid for their Project Gigabit, the BDUK program, which was a subsidy to build 50,000 more premises around those areas. But in reaching those 50, there was another 150,000 premises that I could build. So their stimulus actually anchored me into building another 150,000, so 200,000 premises around that area. And that's a smart program right there. It's not state aid in any way. We're having to build those subsidized properties, but if we're building those subsidized properties, there's a lot of commercial stuff along the way that we'll naturally pick up. So it's a real catalyst for building and helping a network infrastructure get anchored and get built right. So I think there's this market or this industry, being the broadband sector or digital infrastructure, if you want, I think is so critically important that the government must have a hand in not only putting money or capital to work, but also in regulating it so that it's in the right shape. I mean, I don't know about anything else today, but I do know that we're seeing a trend where people feel it's more important to have connectivity than it is to have water in their own apartments now. They'll go out and share the water, or they'll go share the kitchenette, they'll go to an outside bathroom even in Japan, and they're renting homes or they're renting houses that do not have running water in them anymore, but they have to have broadband connectivity. So people are beginning to select broadband connectivity over some other old utilities. You would never think about that, but you're seeing in even Korea now where there's whole dormitories for students where they don't have running water in their own houses. They have to go share the bathrooms, but every one of them has broadband. So I think that the next generation that we're bringing up is going to feel that broadband is critically important to them as a human, staying connected, doing their work as we see, and then socially connecting with everything they do. So I think it's critically important to the success of any economy today is to have a world-class digital infrastructure.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of that already, just how crucial it is. But it's been fascinating to get your insight into a whole range of areas, Greg. So thank you for taking a few minutes to sit down and have a chat with us.
Super, thank you.